Okay, hello, welcome to our HTML and CSS basics workshop. We're going to go over HTML basics. We'll do a little demo. We'll go over CSS basics, and then we'll demo that as well. If you have any questions, put it in the chat, and we will answer those as we go along. Presenting is myself and Cheyenne Bubby. Okay, so we're going to get started with first, we're going to show how to use developer tools or dev tools. And this is a way to inspect code on the websites that you're looking at on your browser. This is what it looks like. So here we're using dev tools to inspect this Google page. And you could see the different HTML elements that the page is using, as well as some styling, which is CSS. Let's get started on HTML first. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the standard markup language for creating web pages. It describes the basic structure for any website and tells the browser how to display the content. It consists of a series of elements used to contain and organize the content of the site. It's usually the first coding language that you learn in web development. This is an example of HTML. There's a heading, a body. Sometimes you'll see a footer at the bottom. The doc type HTML is a declaration that defines this document as a HTML5 document. So this tells the browser what type of language to read. So there's HTML, but more commonly now, there's HTML5 that's being used. The head element contains meta information about the HTML page. The title element specifies the title for the HTML page, which is shown in the browser's title bar or in the Pages tab. The body element defines the document's body and is the container for all visible content, such as headings, paragraphs, images, hyperlinks, tables, etc. So the first element here is the H1 element, and it defines a large heading. And H1 goes from H1 to, I think, H5. And they get smaller as the numbers go higher. So the largest heading would be an H1. Paragraph is where you'll put most of your text, and that's P. So you notice here that there's an opening bracket and a closing bracket. The bracket has the slash. The closing bracket has the slash. So, like I said, it's defined by a start tag, content, and an end tag. Here is an example of a paragraph element. Here are some more examples of different elements. Some HTML elements don't need a closing tag, so this would be a line break here. This is a page break. And then the image tag, which is IMG, also doesn't need a closing element. And then we'll get to what these mean in a minute. So another important HTML element is list and tables. There are two main types of lists, and those are unordered list, which is a list with bullets, and then an ordered list, which will be numbered. So for example, an unordered list, and then LI is the list item. So this would be bulleted here, food, drinks, like you see. And then an ordered list will automatically number that list. And then again, notice that this is open and closed, and then the list items are nested inside these brackets. So this is a parent element, and then this is a child element when it's nested inside of another element. Tables. So you can create tables with however many rows and columns you need. Here you would open the table with the opening table element. You close it at the bottom, and then you nest your rows and then your table data. So this is table row. You see our first row here and then the table data. So this is row 1, first name, last name, table data, table row 2, Grace Hopper. It's pretty easy once you get used to looking at it. So you can label your elements in order to access them later for event handling and for styling purposes. This is important for when you have a separate CSS sheet and you want to refer back to this specific table. So here the table ID is going to be name table. And then here we have an H3 heading, and we named it title, and we input name database with the closing tag. So whenever we refer back to these, I'm going to refer back to this as ID name table, and then the ID would be title. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and let Cheyenne Bubby demonstrate those elements for you.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So today we're just going to make a really simple personal website out of HTML and CSS. And at the end, it's going to look like this. So the first step would be to go to your code editor, create a folder, and make an index.html file and add an image of yourself that you like.
Sorry, what software is this for?
So use any code editor that you like,
Okay.
any text editor, I mean.
So Cheyenne
I'm
Bubby,
using
which one
Atom.
are you using a specific code editor here, or is it just any text editor that they can use on their laptop?
So I'm using Atom. That's what I prefer, but you can use VS Code. And if you don't have any of that, you can just use Notepad as well for HTML. I don't recommend that, but yeah. So just create a folder, make an index.html file, and add an image of yourself that you like.
Does everyone have a code editor downloaded or some sort of text editor, or do they need help setting up with that? Just let us know. Okay, I think we're good to continue then, but we're also recording this, so if you do want to refer back to this, we will have it recorded. So
I'm going to paste the link of the website in the chat. How do I? So that's the website if you guys want to take a look. So the first thing I'm going to show is the dev tools that we talked about. So right click anywhere on the page. Once you're on the page, click on inspect. So these are the dev tools. So what this is this is the HTML that I used to code up the website. And styles here show the styles, the CSS that I used for the heading. So right now I've chosen the heading. So this is the style I used for the heading. Now, if you want to look at other elements on the HTML page, then you can just click on them and the styles are going to get updated. And the HTML code that I used to code up the image is going to get highlighted here. So dev tools are really useful to just go through websites, look at different elements on the HTML page, look at the styles they used to code it up. So that's what we are going to use to really duplicate this website. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the heading on the top. So that's the name. This is the boilerplate of HTML. So this is the first line, doc type HTML. This means that we're using HTML5. So that's just to declare that this file, this text file is going to be of HTML. Then these are two HTML tags. Most HTML tags have an opening tag and a closing tag. There's a few tags that you don't need to close, and we'll discuss one of them today. So there's mainly two components that the HTML files are divided into. So it's going to be the head and the body. So the head contains information like the title of the page or the links. If you want to link to like a font, or you want to link to some images or some icons, a style sheet of CSS or some JavaScript that you're using, all of that goes into the head and the title of the page. And everything else that you see on the web page, or like, like for example, headings, text, images, lists, tables, everything goes into the body. So we're going to start off with the head tag. So you see here how this reads my personal website. So this is what's called the title of an HTML page or a web page. So we're going to go ahead and say my personal website, or anything else that you want to name it. Now, if you want to check if you did this right, you can just open this index.html page in any browser of your choice. You could do this by going into your Finder or Windows Explorer, double clicking on index.html, and it's going to open up for you. Other way would be to just copy the full path of the project or the HTML page and just loading that. So this is my HTML page. As you can see, it's blank right now because I haven't added anything to the body. But this got updated and it says my personal website because I just changed the title. Any questions till now?
Yeah, how would you create that HTML like sheet on your, how'd you make that?
So
Do you just go to file and like new? Or
okay, so are you in like a code editor right now?
yeah.
Okay, so there could be an option. So if you click on a new file, right? If you have an option like that, just say index.html and create a file, hit enter. That should work.
Okay, yeah, I just did that and like saved it to my like downloads or whatever.
Okay, and I'm also going to copy paste this boilerplate code into the chat so we are all on the same page. Yeah, I just pasted everything in the chat. Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to move ahead. So we are done with the title. Now let's go ahead and start to edit the body of the page. So the first thing that you can see on the page is my name. So this is an H1 that we talked about on the first slide, I think, of HTML. That's a heading. So go ahead, go into your body, write down, start with an opening angle bracket and write H1. And this is the opening tag. And the second one is the closing tag. So remember in HTML, everything that's supposed to go in the H1 is going to be in between the two tags. So now go and write your name. So that's how my HTML page looks now. So this is an H1. It's a heading. We can also go ahead and edit this font size if people are using CSS, and we'll see that soon. So I'll show how H2 looks. So H2 is going to be just a little bit tinier. So that's how it is. And the smallest one, the smallest heading that you could have is A6 in HTML. So this is going to be the tiniest heading. But we are using H1 for now. Is everyone okay with this much? Okay, I'm going to move on. So the next thing on the page is the image. I'm going to skip that for now, and we'll add that at the end because the image size that I'm using is quite large. So if I add it right now, it's going to cover up the entire page. So I'll add it at the end. So let's do the next thing. So this is some text. So usually when you see just plain text like this, it's usually written using the P tag, which stands for the paragraph tag. So it's just, these are just two introductory lines about myself. So I'm just going to copy paste right from here. I'm going to start with the P tag. So remember an opening tag and a closing tag. And I'm going to paste this here. So we have my name, we have a small introduction. You can write something about yourself. So now if you look at the web page that I'm coding right now, and if you look at the final website, there is a really slight difference. So these two lines are on two different lines. These are not actually continuing here. And here it looks like it's the same paragraph. So here I'm actually changing a paragraph, and on where we are currently, we are not actually changing a paragraph. So to do that, we use a tag named BR. So BR is just that. So like I said, there's some tags in HTML that don't actually require a closing tag, and BR is one of them. It stands for break. So the line breaks right after science because I have a BR tag there. And if I didn't have it, then the second line would start right after the first line. So this was the first part of the page. Any questions till now? Okay, I'm going to move ahead. So now the next thing you see is a line separating out into a new section that's hobbies. So to make this line, you use a tag which is horizontal rule. So that's just HR. This again is another self-closing tag. So you don't actually need two tags. You don't need an opening or like a closing tag. One of the reasons for this is there's nothing that's going to go in here. You're not going to be writing anything between the two tags. So you just have one tag there. So HR stands for horizontal rule, and it makes a horizontal rule on your page like that. And it's a self-closing tag. Moving on to the next section, it's hobbies. So if you take a look at this heading is actually smaller than the first heading on the page. That was my name. So now if you just go on the inspect tool, this selector for the elements on the HTML page and click on hobbies, you can check in the styles that this is an H2. And it also says right here that this is an H2, which is the second largest heading after H1. So now we're going to use H2. So go ahead, create two tags, an opening tag for H2 and a closing tag for H2, and write hobbies in between them. the next thing we're going to look at are another HTML tags. This is a list. So there's two types of lists in HTML. One of them is an unordered list and the other one is an ordered list. This is not in order, just like you can see, this is just bullet points. And if you wanted this list to look like number 1, dancing, number 2, cooking, number 3, reading, that's going to be an ordered list. So we are using unordered lists today. So this is going to start with UL, that starts with an unordered list. That's how you declare an unordered list. Remember to have 2 tags, an opening and a closing. The next thing you do is create a list item. So create the first bullet point. For that, the tag is li. So like you can see, a bullet point just appeared on the HTML page. So let's write down dancing. And like this, I'm going to create 2 more bullet points. So that's an unordered list. To recap how you do that, it's first you declare an unordered list with an opening tag and with a closing tag. And then you have list items, and you can add as many as you want. And let's say you wanted an ordered list. You wanted numbers there. So the only thing you need to change is change this tag to OL, which stands for an ordered list. So now it changed to numbers. Are there any questions? Okay, I'm going to move ahead. So we again have a horizontal rule. So we are just going to add another HR tag, and that adds another horizontal rule. Now the next section is the work experience. So you can just check which heading this is by clicking on the element on the web page and see how this is an H2 heading. So let's start with the next section and make an H2 heading for work experience. And the work experience here has been described in a table. That's an HTML table. And this is using a few tags like the table tag, the table row tags, the table data tags, and table headers. So for this, how you start is you have to first declare that you're going to start off with the table. So these are the table tags. Remember, an opening tag, a closing tag for a table. So you've just declared a table, and what goes inside would be a table row. So this is the first row you're creating. Now, imagine there's a row, and now you need to declare columns. So this is going to be the first row, so which is usually going to describe what's going to go in each column. So the first column should say the job title, and the second column should say time period. So this is going to be a table header. So TH, so start with a TH and TH opening tag and with a TH closing tag. So job title. And time period. So like you can see, this is the first row of the table describing the 2 columns that we're going to create from now on. TH is only used for the first column, usually. So this is used to just describe the column titles. And like you can see, HTML on its own just bolds the titles. And now if you go and create another row, it's just going to appear as the next row. And we are going to use the TD tag, which is a table cell. So the first one I have here. I'll just go ahead, add this. So that's the second row. And like you can see, when we use DH, the job title and the time period got bolded because of the table header tag, and the table data tag or the table cell tag doesn't bold the content on its own. And that's the main difference between the two tags. I'll just go ahead, create another row with the second experience. TD. Okay, so that's the table for now. So we've pretty much completed the entire HTML for the page. And the only thing left is the image. So everything else that you see on the web page will be added using CSS, all the colors, all the customizations of the text, the stable borders and everything. We're going to add those later with CSS. So the HTML part for now is done. So to add the image, add it right after the H1 tag. Go ahead, add image, and add src to it, which stands for source. Now, for this, you have to add the path of the image I asked you to choose. So just copy the path of the image and paste it. So like I said, it's a huge image that's going to cover up the entire web page right now because we are not using CSS. So that's why I didn't add it earlier. But is everyone okay with it? Are there any questions about the HTML?
The nice thing about working with HTML is that you can really see directly what changes you're making. So it's very visual. It's a visual process, which is fun.
Yeah, it's like you write one line of code and you can just see what you did. You don't have to go through like other you don't have to do it like programming languages that are, you have to go through, you know, the entire process of like writing down like 50 or 100 lines of code to get one line of output. HTML gives you an output for each line of code you write. So yeah, like Hannah said, it's really visual.
I just wanted to comment on the alt tag in your image. So the alt tag is for screen reader purposes. And this is where we describe the photo.
Yeah. So I think I'll let you take over now and so that you can go through the CSS slides.
Okay, sounds good. To get to it. So we went through all of this and now we're at CSS. So CSS is how we style our HTML. It's called cascading style sheets. It's the core of all styling elements for any web page. It specifies style guidelines for a web page, and it uses the IDs, classes, HTML tags, and other components of HTML. And then, like we said before, HTML provides the skeleton of the page, and CSS will provide the look of the page.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know, is it black? Is it a black screen for everyone else as well? It's not loading for me.
Yeah, same. Can you try
Okay.
sharing again?
Shoot, yeah, I will.
I can also share the slides as well if your connection is down.
Okay, I think it's on. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Let me do this again. Can you see it now? Oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Or I don't know why it's not working. Let me try it again. Can you see it now?
No, I still cannot see it. I don't know about everyone else.
Okay, if you want to share, Simran,
Yeah, no problem.
you can share. I went through 2 slides of it being just black, I guess. Okay, did you guys see this or no?
No, if you could just kind of give a recap, that would be great.
Okay, so this just says that CSS is cascading style sheets. It's named this because you could use multiple CSS files or style sheets on one HTML for one HTML file. It specifies the style guidelines for the web page. It uses the IDs that we mentioned before. Classes is a different type of CSS element. It uses HTML tags and other components of HTML. And then, like I said before, HTML provides the skeleton of a web page and CSS provides the look. Okay, we could go to the next slide. So the structure of CSS is you select the element. So here where it says selector 1, that could be H1, that could be P for all paragraphs on the page, etc. There's opening brackets, and then you describe a property such as color or background color, text or font family, font size. The attribute would be, for example, if we're doing color would be the property, and then attribute would be purple. And then you could define as many as you want within those brackets, and they need a closing bracket. So there are different ways to select the HTML element on the page. I think in this demo we saw the ID tag, and I think we use a name tag. Classes are also a different type of selector. Tags would be if you were to say P or H1. And then if you look closely, you see on tags, if you have a P or H1 element, you just write the element. So selector here would be just H1. Under that, IDs, the way to select an ID is to have the hash or a number sign before the selector name. So if our ID was, let's say it's like, I don't know, table, name table. ID equals name table in HTML. To select that, you do hash or number sign name table. Classes, the same thing, except the selector is a period before the name of that selector. And then in HTML, you write, for example, where it says selector equals value, that would say ID equals name table. Okay, next slide. And then here's an example. So on the right side is our CSS style sheet. We called it example.css. On the left side is our HTML sheet. Normally this is index.html. And here, an important part of this is in the head section of the HTML file, there's a link to our style sheet. So you see where it says link equals style sheet. The type is text/CSS, and then the reference is the name of the CSS file, which in this case is example.css. And in the HTML, you can see our elements. We have H1, we have paragraphs, we have divs, which divs are a way to kind of divide and organize the information on the page. On the left side, on the CSS style sheet, you could see how we are styling using tags. So here we selected body. And then we put our attributes in the brackets. If you go down to special one, we're using the ID here. So notice that there's a hashtag special one. And then on the HTML side, you could see that the H1 ID is special one. So this H1 tag will be styled in cursive, whereas the other H1 tags will not. It's a way to be more specific about what you're selecting. And then at the bottom, we're using classes. Where's the colored class on the HTML side? Oh, okay, it's in the second div. And so I've heard in CSS styling practices, IDs are used whenever you will only use something once, whereas classes are used when you're going to use that style multiple times. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. So properties and attributes. If you want to be a front-end designer, you will get very familiar with these. So for example, font size, border, margin, color, font family. So they're defined by the property, colon, and then the attribute. The attribute is whatever you select that property to be. Okay, and then the next one. So this is again how to link the CSS file to your HTML file. In the brackets, you could probably copy and paste this if your CSS sheet was titled index.css. The most important part is to link and reference your CSS sheet to your HTML. Okay, next slide. Does anyone have any questions about that? I think we're going to demo it in a minute. Okay, I think that's it for CSS. Shambhavi, you can show us how to style this.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So to add CSS, the first step is obviously creating a CSS file. So in the same folder, go ahead, create a new file, name it style.css. Once you do that, we're going to start styling all the HTML elements we had on this page. And just so the HTML file knows where to get the style from, we are going to link the style.css file in the head tag. So go ahead, add a link tag, have rel set to style sheet and href set to the path of the style.css file that I asked you to create. I'm also going to post this in the chat. Is everyone okay with this? Make a new file, style.css, and then just link it in the HTML. Make sure you do it in the head tag. So the first thing I think I should do, at least, is to fix the image since it's covering up the entire web page right now. So in the slides, we discussed IDs and classes. So you use IDs when you want to apply a style that you don't want to apply, that doesn't really overlap with the style you want to apply to other HTML elements. So this image is one of those. So I'm not really going to apply the style that I apply to this image to other images, since there's no other images, right? So like you can see, the image on the final website is a lot smaller and it's rounded on the edges. So go ahead, first add an ID. So the way you use an ID is you just add the ID attribute to the image tag and then name it something. I'm just gonna say my photo. Save that. Now copy the ID name. Go to your style.css file. Now paste it here. So in order to select IDs, you have to start with a hashtag. It's different for classes and it's different for different elements, but since this is an ID that we have, we are going to start off with a hashtag followed by the ID name, open and closed curly braces, and we're going to write the style in between these. So the first thing we could change would be the width. That's going to adjust the entire size of it. So maybe we can make the width to be 50% of what this is right now. So just write down 50%. That just instantly reduces the size of the entire image. So I like that size, but if you want to use a different size, you can just play around with the width, try increasing it, decreasing it, and the width doesn't just have to be in percent. You can use pixels as well. So I could just write 100 pixels. So that further reduces the size of the image. But I'm going to stick to 50%. So that's the width. Now, the next thing I did was change the corners of the image and make them rounded. So how you do that is you use the border radius property of CSS. So now what you do is you write down, a percent or like pixels, and that's going to just reduce. The higher the number of pixels you use, the more rounded the edges are going to be. So let's say I just say 50 pixels. So that's how it looks right now. Now, if I say 150, that just makes the entire image rounded. So again, this is a personal choice, how you want to keep the size or the border radius, whatever looks good to you, go ahead and do that. And make sure you're checking simultaneously on your web page locally if the changes are actually working. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, let's go back and look at the web page. So the first thing that I see that's different is the H2 tag, the H1 tag, I mean. So select the H1 tag and let's see the CSS properties I used on this H1 tag. So like we can see, the color is different and the font size is 50 pixels. So this is the CSS I used. So that's what we're going to do in the demo as well. So
wait, sorry to interrupt, Shine Bubby, but we do have a question in the chat with how do you preview your code? So I'm pretty sure if you just open up the HTML file in your browser, that should work and you should be able to see it. But
yeah, so just go in your Finder if you're using Mac, or go into the Windows Explorer and double click on index.html. And that's just going to open up everything in your browser. The reason why it shows up in my code editor is because I'm just using a package that helps me do that. But you should be able to do it on your browser.
Sorry, I've never done this before, so I'm just trying to figure it out. But for some reason, it's not working for me, but that's okay.
Okay, so where are you stuck?
I tried to drag it just straight to like my search engine. And then it just disappeared. So now I have to refind it.
Oh, Do you have the index.html file, or do you mean you just like lost the file?
No, I have it. I have it. I saved it, so I'm just pulling it back up.
Okay, so just if you just want to view the changes you've made, just double click on the HTML file and it should open up in a browser.
Okay, thank you.
And don't worry if there's any bugs. I'm going to post the code later on the Wix Discord anyway. So you can check where you made, there could be a bug somewhere. You can just compare your code to mine.
Grace, did that work for you with double clicking on it? Are you able to see it, your code?
No, and I actually can't even find it in my finders right now, so
Okay, we can
somehow I made it
troubleshoot
worse.
that.
It's okay. I'll find it. I'll keep looking.
Okay, let us know when you find it and we can troubleshoot that with you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Do you just want me to copy paste the HTML code I've written till now on the chat so you can just create a new file and work on that?
If you could, that'd be awesome.
Okay. So a few things might not work, like the image, because it's obviously referring to my image right now, but everything else should be fine, I believe.
And then my question for the image is, can you just type in like what you have it saved at and named in your computer as, or do you have to go to the Pathfinder and then do it that like way?
Okay, so it depends on where you have the image saved. So if it's in the same folder as your index.html, just go ahead, type the name of the image, and it should appear. Name of the image with the extension. Otherwise, if you have it saved somewhere else, then you have to write down the entire path. So that's why one of the first things I told you guys to do is just save the image in the folder, just because it makes it easier to add the path to the HTML.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. I'll also go ahead and paste the style.css. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to move ahead and we're going to start off with editing the H1 here. So the H1 is my name. So you can just go ahead and type H1 here. Since it's an HTML element, you don't need to start with anything like a hashtag, like a period. You can just say H1 and start editing this. And the reason why I'm doing this is because we don't have any other H1 here and no other H1s that I want to style differently. But if you have multiple H1s on the same page, then you might want to think if you want to style them the same way. And if you do, this is how you do it. Otherwise, I recommend using IDs or classes so that you can specifically style different H1 elements. So the color I'm using is this. So I'm just going to copy the color from here. Now you can just go ahead and add any color of your choice. You don't have to use this color. So I think if you just write color and set it to like red, that should work as well. If you say yellow, that should just plainly work as well. This is another style choice that you can make. So another thing that you can see in the DevTools I did was adjust the font size and set it to 50 pixels for the H1. So font size, set it to 50 pixels. Is everyone okay with this?
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm gonna move ahead. Let's see. So the next element is the image that we did style. The next thing is the P element. Let's see. So in the DevTools, we can see the font size has been set to 20 pixels. So now if you see in the CSS, I'm using a class. It's not the P tag directly as I used in H1. So whenever you see a period as the selector, it means you're styling a class. So you're supposed to use classes when you have different elements on your HTML that you want to style the same way. So if we just take a look on the page, there's this paragraph that looks similar to the font here in the hobbies, and the table font looks quite different. So it looks like these two tags, these two HTML elements, the list items and the paragraph that we made, have the same class. Let's go ahead and first add a class to all these HTML elements. So how you add a class is similar to ID. Let's just say description like I did. So just copy this and copy this into your list tags as well. So now the paragraph, so that's here, and the list items, all these bullet points, the list we had, have the same class called description. So now if we want to style the entire paragraph and the tags together, we can use a class. So let's start with a period or a full stop and write down description. So this is how you select a class. Now let's see the styling I did. So the styling I used was I just set the font size to be 20 pixels. So let's just set the font size to 20 pixels. So that looks good. So now let's go ahead, look at the next styling we have to do. Any questions till now? Okay, now so the next thing we have to style is this H2 heading for hobbies. So let's see how I style the H2. So you can see in the DevTools, if you just click on hobbies, that we changed the color and I also changed the font size. So, and I applied the same style to work experience. If you can recall, this is also an H2. So if I select H2 to edit hobbies, it's also going to edit the second heading. Let's go ahead and edit H2. So this is going to select hobbies and work experience. So I set the color to be the same as H1. So we can just do that. And now the second thing was the font size. So that's 30 pixels. So we are almost there. The only thing we have to edit now is the table. So if you look at the table, there's just borders around the entire table. So to select the table, what you can do is just write down So we use the table tag here. So to select this tag, we will just write down table and go ahead and add border to this. So the border tag takes in a few different properties. So I'm actually gonna go and see how I styled it. So yeah, so it takes, the first thing it takes is what do you want the thickness of the border to be? The second is the type of border you want. So I used a solid one, like you can see here. But there's other ones like dotted, etc. You can look that up. And the last thing that you need to set is the color of the border. So I'm gonna go ahead, say 1 pixel, solid black. It's necessary that you use this border only. Now you can see that there's a border around the table, but inside the table, there's nothing separating the columns and the rows. So to do that, we can select the table header and the table row and the table data, all of those things. So let's start with table row and add the same styling to the table row. Okay, that doesn't do anything. So let's look at table headers. I think that should, yeah, okay. So when you do table headers, it gave border to the table header tags that we used on the first row. Now go ahead and use TD. So that's going to represent these 4 cells. So the bottom 2 rows and the same styling. So that's the table. Any questions? Okay. So this looks quite similar. So the only thing that's still different, if you haven't noticed, is the font type. So this is not the same. So let's look at the font I'm using here. And it looks like the entire page is using a different font. So I think I applied the font to the entire body. So this is not just applied to like an H1 or like an H2 or like a paragraph. It's applied to the entire body, because if you see the entire font on this page is consistent. So if you just click on the body, it's going to show the font I used. Okay, so there's a few styles I applied to the body and it shows in the DevTools. So I set a background color, which is really close to white, because I just forgot that I used this actually. And then there's a font family, which means the font type you want to use. And there's padding. So let's just go ahead and add the font family. So that changes the font of the entire body. So everything that was in the body, that was the H1s, H2s, the list elements, the image, everything is going to have the font family that is Arial right now. So the other thing that I had was padding. Padding is basically, it's like the spaces, the white space you have on the borders. So this is a good way to represent padding. So if you go in the DevTools and you scroll down, it's going to show you like a rectangle. And if you just hover over the padding, you can see what the padding is. So that's what the padding represents. So it's like the white space around the body and like the screen that you have. So I set that to 20 pixels. So that's why there's like white space on the top, on the left, the right. So I'll just go ahead, add the padding as well. Yeah. So that's it. That completes the personal website. Are there any questions? I'm going to post the code on the Wix Discord server if anyone needs it, so you can look at this later.
Yeah, and also just to reiterate, this meeting is recorded as well. So if you do want to go back and watch it, we post our recordings to our YouTube channel. Yeah, thank you, Shah and Bubby. Is there anything else?
Grace, do you still need help?
No, I have like all the codes and stuff. So I think I'll be able to figure out if I just like rewatch, honestly. But thank you guys so much. This was really helpful.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm also going to post the code on the Discord. And if you have any questions, just message us on Discord, just reach out.